Hi there, it's the first Sunday of Advent, and I'm going to share a short video reflection on the scripture readings that have been suggested for today. But first, I want to actually mention what Advent is. Advent is a time of waiting and hope and expectation leading up to Christmas. And it's a time when we're hoping and expecting and waiting for the birth of Jesus. But there's other ways that it's about hoping and waiting and expecting and paying attention, because we're also looking out for signs of the return of Christ and signs of the renewal of the earth. The readings for today are from Jeremiah chapter 33, verses 14 to 16, and Luke's Gospel chapter 21, verse 25 to 36. So feel free to pause the video and have a read of those and then come back. What kind of things do we expect to see and hear at this time of the year if we go to the shopping centre, if we go to Chadstone or M-City or Dandenong Plaza? Usually what we'll see is Santa, we'll see reindeer and snow, even though we wouldn't expect to see snow in the kind of weather we have this time of year. And we'd see Christmas decorations and presents. Because for our society, it's Christmas now. And that means buying and selling, because that's what is important in our global society. There's only so many shopping days left until Christmas, and you know how crazy the shops are going to get. And you don't know what's going to run out at the department stores or at the supermarkets. You don't want to be missing out on anything that you need. And then there's all the parties in the lead up to Christmas, because we have to start early, because otherwise people are going to be too busy. We're encouraged to ignore the fact and overlook the fact that we're in a cost of living crisis, and that so many of us are actually finding it hard to get by. At the same time that our society is speeding up and rushing towards Christmas, in the church we're being encouraged to keep our cool and wait and pay attention, to keep our eyes open, be attentive. In our two scripture readings, we have two apocalyptic readings. And when I say apocalyptic, I don't necessarily mean that they're to do with the end of the world. I mean that there's an unveiling going on. There's a revealing of what God sees is really going on. Both of the readings are about experiences of devastation, not celebration. We might feel like we're out of step with society around us because of that. The vision that we heard from the Jewish prophet Jeremiah is a vision of hope, but it's a vision of hope that arrives in the middle of devastation, because the Jewish people had been defeated by Babylon and their leaders had been taken away to Babylon. Everyone else was left in a wasted land where the crops had been destroyed, and so had their fortifications and their homes and their temple. And this was especially devastating because they had an understanding of God as the God of their land. They didn't expect that God was going to be with them in exile. And they had an understanding that God would never allow their kings to be defeated. Through their reflection on their experience during that period, many of them came to the conclusion that their rulers had led them in the wrong direction and God was punishing them. But in that situation of devastation, Jeremiah sees that God is making something new grow. What has been cut off is going to be restored. Not just the land, but good and fair leadership for their nation. A shoot is only small. You have to look for it. But if you keep your eyes open, you might find it, even in the middle of devastation. And it doesn't undo the devastation. It doesn't take the devastation away. But the new growth is still good. In the gospel reading, we hear Jesus talking about a moment of devastation. For ancient Christians, when they heard this being read out, it probably would have reminded them of the Jewish rebellion and the siege of Jerusalem and the Roman forces destroying the city, destroying the new Jewish temple, people fleeing across the world. But Jesus says that just as they can look at the sky and see signs of woe, there are also signs of new life, growing in despite of the devastation. Plants budding and blooming and bearing fruit. We shouldn't ignore or overlook the devastation, but we need to make sure we aren't overwhelmed or paralyzed by it. Our attention needs to be on the places where good new things are growing, even though things are difficult. During Advent and Christmas, a whole lot of the churches in Australia work together to raise funds to support projects around the world that are embodying the hope that we have at Advent and Christmas, the hope of renewal and restoration. One of the projects that we're supporting this year is to help farmers in Indonesia respond to the changing climate. We were hearing a story today about a farmer who grows rice, and whenever it floods, the crops have been getting washed away. And the project that we're supporting is to help farmers like him and his family to adapt to the flooding and to find ways that they can make sure that their crops aren't as affected. So that's an example, I think, of the kind of hope that we're looking out for, the kind of growth that we're looking out for. And we might be able to see other examples of good new growth coming up if we keep our eyes open. This Advent, as we wait for the arrival of Jesus, as we wait in hope for the restoration of the earth, let's keep our eyes open, looking out for the places where good new things are growing, despite the difficult times.